Okay, in this chapter we're going to talk about a couple things in particular. We're going to discuss quickly the third and the seventh of every chord, but we're really going to discuss more in detail the dominant voicing and why the dominant chord is a little bit unique in terms of the upper extensions that you can use to really kind of create some cool dominant seven voicings. The first thing I want to call your attention to, though, is the fact that the third and the seventh have a very special role in every chord that we've been playing. So let's just take our C minor 7 voicing quickly. All right, the third and the seventh of any chord are referred to as the guide tones. And the guide tones, if you've been noticing, the third and the seventh have been in every chord we've used. We have substituted the ninth for the root, and we've substituted the 13th for the fifth. But we have never substituted the third or the seventh. So the third and the seventh are in all of our chords. And the reason why they are is because the third and the seventh, referred to as the guide tones, they tell us the quality of the chord. They tell us whether that chord, when I say quality, I mean whether the chord is major, minor, or dominant. If you notice, the root doesn't tell us anything really. If I play a C, that doesn't tell me whether it's major, minor, or dominant. If I play the C and the fifth, the G, that doesn't tell me whether it's major, minor, or dominant. But if I play C7, well, the third and the seventh there tell us it's dominant because it's different than the third and the seventh on a C major. C major 7, C dominant 7, C minor 7. So the third and the seventh do a lot to give us information as to the quality of the chord, whether it's major, minor, or dominant. So third and seventh, very important to make sure that you have the third and the seventh in all of your voicings. Now, when we talk about upper extensions, what we really mean is the notes that are above the chord tones. So we refer to the notes in the chord, root, 3, 5, and 7, as the chord tones. And any notes that are above that, we think in terms of upper extensions, we give them a number that's above the chord tones. So for example, when we want to use the D on a C minor 7 voicing, we don't refer to it as the 2, we refer to it as the ninth. So the ninth is one available upper extension, the 11th is another available upper extension on a minor voicing. We don't refer to it as the 4th, we refer to it as the 11th. So I have a sheet, and you'll have access to it as part of this lesson, that talks about all the available upper extensions, meaning the extensions that you can use, that you can incorporate into your chords, sort of into more of like a two-handed comping style, which we'll talk about later in this lesson. But just to give you a quick taste, what I mean is, if you want to play a C minor 7 chord, and you want to use some upper extension notes, there are certain notes which you can use, which are available upper extensions. And then there are certain notes that we don't use. So the available upper extensions on a minor 7 chord are the 9, the 11, and pretty much the 6th or the 13th. The 13th, but we generally don't refer to it as the 13th. It's more commonly seen as a C minor 6 chord. So that's a slight little wrinkle in the explanation, but 9s and 11s you'll see quite frequently on minor 7 voicings. Now, on dominant voicings, this is where you can incorporate a lot of like jazz colors. So let's take a look at our G7 voicing. Okay? First step, we're going to invert it so the third's in the bass. We're going to replace the root with the 9 and the 5 with the 13. So you notice I still have my third and my 7th in the chord. Those never get touched. But the 5th we moved for the 13th, and the 9th the root we replaced with the 9th. So, here's my G7, and here is C major. So you can see how that voice leading works very well. Now, here's where you might want to start getting into some cool dominant voicing alterations. We have available as upper extensions on the dominant voicing a whole bunch of notes that we can use on G7. Okay? We know already that we can use 9 and we can use 13. So we can also flat the 9th. You might have seen flat 9 voicings before. You can sharp the 9th, sharp 9 voicings. You can flat the 13th, flat 13 voicing. The question is, though, when do you want to use those, and how do you use them in your voicing? How do you use flat 9s and flat 13s in your voicing, and when is it, generally good sense to use, those kinds of alterations on your voicings? Well, here's one little tip that really opened up my playing for me a lot when I discovered it at first. The 5 chord, the dominant chord, when you're going from 5 to a minor 1, that's a great time to use some of your alterations. So for example, if I'm in G7, if I have a G7 voicing, and it's going not to C major, but to C minor. So I'm going 5 to a minor 1. It's a great time to use G7 and alter some of my extensions. So let's try a flat 9, flat 13 voicing. If I've already gotten to this step, if I've already built my G7 chord, all I have to do is take my 9th and flat it, half step. There's my flat 9, my 13th, and flat it by half step. There's my flat 13th. Here's my G7, flat 9, flat 13 voicing. I'll put the root in the bass so you can hear it. And that voicing going to a C minor 7 voicing, the voice leading is very strong. If you want to see why, you can see that the B natural, the 3rd, resolves down by half step to the 7th of the C minor. The E flat, the flat 13, resolves down by half step to that D natural, the 9th on C minor. The 7th of G7 resolves down by whole step to the E flat, and the flat 9, the A flat on G7, resolves down by half step to the G, which is the 5th on C minor. So there's a lot of strong voice leading movement going from 5 to 1 there. Let's try another one. Let's try D7 going to G minor. So we have a 5, D7 going to a 1, and that 1 is minor. So the first step is we're going to build our D7 voicing. Root 3, 5, 7. Now we're going to put the 7th in the bass. That's step 2. We're going to replace the root with the 9th, step 3. And step 4 is we're going to take that 5th and replace it with the 13th. So here's my D7 voicing. Now, if I'm going to G minor, I want to use some of that jazz flavor. I want to use some of those flat 9s, flat 13s, those altered extensions. So I have my D7, and I want to use a flat 9 and a flat 13. So I'm going to take my 9th, my E natural, flat it by half step, E flat. I'm going to take my 13th, my B natural, and flat that by a half step. So here's my D7, flat 9, flat 13 voicing. And I'm going to take that and go 5-1 to G minor. Now another one that you might see commonly that works pretty well going from dominant to a minor 1 is a sharp 9, flat 13 voicing. So let's look at that quickly. D7, I'm going to build it quickly again. 7th in the bass, place the root with the 9, place the 5th with the 13th. Here's D7. Now I'm going to use a flat 13, so I'll take my 13th and flat it by half step, and a sharp 9. So now my 9th, which is E, is going to go up by half step to the F natural. Here's my D7, flat 13, sharp 9 voicing. And I'm taking that to my G minor 7 voicing. So whether you use flat 9, flat 13, or sharp 9, flat 13, you get a little bit more of that dominant tension with the altered extensions going to the minor 1, and it works well. And I prefer that sound over flat, natural 9, natural 13 going to the minor 1. Okay, so there might be contexts in which you want to use a natural 9 and a natural 13 going to the minor 1. If you want sort of that surprise element of having this sound all of a sudden go to the minor 1. If you want to try to create some of that nice voice leading, going from the altered dominant, the altered 5 chord to the minor 1, then you want to use, in practice, incorporating some of the flat 9, flat 13, sharp 9, flat 13, some of those sounds. Okay? So I would strongly suggest going through, picking some 2-5-1 progressions and going 2-5 and making your 5-1 a major 5-1, 5 to a major 1, and then 5 to a minor 1. And on your 5 chord, use your flat 9, sharp 9, and flat 13 voicings as much as you can. Get that sound in your ears, get it under your fingers.